So there's a constitutional showdown coming up between President Trump and the blue states, Oregon, Illinois, California, Massachusetts, New York, on and on. And it's about illegal immigration. The blue states do not want to obey federal law. And they aren't. They're basically saying, we're not obeying. And take us to court to do what you do. The president says, all right, I'm sending in troops and federal agents to enforce immigration law. It's a very easy conflict to understand, but there is no resolution to it yet. The Supreme Court will have to do that. That's the setup. Okay. Now, the current immigration law that we have now was put into effect in 1952. 1952. They have not upgraded immigration law in 74 years. Are you kidding me? Harry Truman was president when Congress passed the immigration law, the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952. Truman vetoed it, never signed it, but Congress overrode his veto. And essentially, it said that illegal entry into the United States, this is under the U.S. Code 81325, is a crime. So if you come here without a valid passport, if you sneak across the border, it is a crime subject to a fine or 6 months in prison or both. Okay? Now, Truman didn't like the law because he felt that it was putting quotas on certain countries, which it was. All right, he didn't like that, but Congress said, too bad, Harry, we're passing a law, and they did. Now, President Biden refused to obey the 1952 law. This whole mess that we're in now is Biden's fault. So he and his minions in the White House just said, not going to enforce it. The clearest example is if you want asylum in the United States, you have to apply for it at a port of entry. No, Biden did not enforce that. So anyone who was caught sneaking into the United States, I want asylum, because that's what the drug cartels, smuggling cartels, told them to say. And the Border Patrol then immediately put them into a confined area, and then Biden released them. Catch and released. And we paid the bus and plane tickets, and then they went wherever they went, and they had to show up in 5 years for a hearing, which, of course, most of them never do. That was all on Joe Biden. It is absolutely an outrage what the man did. He wasn't held to account by Congress, not impeached. The press didn't care, and Biden just skated along for 4 years. The result, 15 million undocumented people came in under the Biden administration. Enter President Trump, who campaigns that I am going to get the undocumented people out of the country. It's a lot of people, 15 million. Okay? Now, in the past, you had to have a judge sign an order of deportation. That's impossible now. Not enough judges, not enough courts, not enough anything. The judge cannot sign a deportation order for 15 million people. So the Trump administration, on January 21st of this year, when Trump took over, said, we're going to have a new policy called expedited removal. Now, it wasn't passed by Congress. We just executive order, expedited removal, Homeland Security, if they catch you, they're booting you. There is a way around that. If a migrant hires an attorney, an immigration attorney, and they say, no, the person fears for his or her life, you got to go into the process, then there is that. They can't boot them if an attorney gets involved. But these migrants can't speak English, they don't have any money. So expedited removal is we catch you, you're gone. We don't need a judge signing a deportation order. That has got to be adjudicated by the Supreme Court because that's brand new and it's underway. Enter the progressive left, which says, oh no, we don't want anybody removed. Due process, this, that, and the other. We don't want anybody removed. And we're not going to cooperate with Homeland Security and ICE agents to find anybody. In fact, we're going to stop them if we can. All right? So the blue states are interfering with the federal law because they don't like it. Now, that is the problem right there. However, it is a crime to interfere with federal law. It's a crime. And that is what has happened in Chicago and Oregon to some extent. So the word is hinder. If you hinder a federal investigation, you can be charged with a federal crime. Certainly, the governors of Illinois, Oregon, Massachusetts, all are hindering federal investigations. And so are the mayors, Johnson and Senate. They're hindering. And I will now prove it, okay? So the U.S. Code 18-1505 says, quote, whoever with intent to avoid, evade, prevent, this is in writing, or obstruct compliance with any civil investigative demand commits a crime. So if you are preventing federal agents from rounding up undocumented people, it's a crime. You're hindering a federal investigation. It's right there. 18 U.S. Code 1505. All right. Now, President Trump has not ordered in his Justice Department to put Pritzker and Johnson and all these people in handcuffs. He could, but that would escalate this to a very, very high level. However, now there is irrefutable proof that this is happening. You remember on Saturday, three ICE agents in Chicago, 10 cars driven by protesters approached, and one woman tried to run them down. They had to shoot the woman. She didn't die. She's in FBI custody now. But the ICE agent shot her. The Chicago Police Department immediately knew that there was trouble. Here's what the dispatcher said. Roll it.
And again, per the Chief of Patrol, we have all the units that, per 999, Chief of Patrol said all units clear out from there. We're not sending anybody over to that location.
62, we're going to clear out as soon as we can, Spot. We're like locked in over here, so we're going to do the best we can to get out of here as soon as we can.
The Chief of Patrol for the Chicago Police Department is a man named John Hein, H-E-I-N. He ordered his police officers not to help the ICE agents or prevent the shooting of that woman. He hindered a federal investigation, which led to violence. Hines should be in jail now, in prison now, or bailed out. You can't do that. I don't know whether the Justice Department is going to take any action at all, but they could. I would. If I were Attorney General, you can't have that. That's anarchy. Now, the Chicago Chief of Police, a man named Larry Snelling, he knows that his Chief of Patrol, second in command, committed a federal crime. He knows it, Snelling. Here's what he said.
Our officers were not told to stand down. Our officers were out there throughout the entire event. I would never tell our officers to stand down, because if our officers were in trouble and we needed help from other officers, I would expect those officers to step in and help us. And it's the same thing that we do on our side.
Snelling's not telling the truth. Obviously, the tape contradicts him. He goes, our officers were not told to stand down? Yeah, they were. And there's no two sides to the story, Chief. You're looking like you're not an honest man. Okay, let's get to the Supreme Court. They're going to have to sort all this out because it is one big mess. And Congress is at fault because you don't keep an antiquated law from 1952 on the books without updating it in the face of Armageddon, in the face of unbelievable intrusion on the part of foreign nationals to this country. Congress doesn't do a thing because both party uses this for their own political benefit. The conservatives want everybody out, the liberals want everybody in. So the Democrats want everybody in, and the Republicans won't, they don't want to compromise on it. So that's just Congress. So the Supreme Court's got to step in. Now, in my possession is a document. I don't know if this document is in anyone else's possession. I have the original document. It is signed by then Attorney General Robert Kennedy in 1963. This is when the president, John F. Kennedy, sent 17,000 National Guard troops to Alabama to force Governor Wallace and the state to admit 9 students into Alabama public schools because Alabama was not obeying the civil rights law. They were flaunting, we're not going to obey it. 17,000 were ordered down. So RFK writes a memo to a senator from Louisiana, who was, of course, on the side of Alabama, saying, no, you don't have the right to send a guard here. Here's what RFK said, quote, when it appeared that the commands of that order had not been obeyed and the obstruction of justice was continuing, the president on the same day issued Executive Order 1111, authorizing and directing the Secretary of Defense to take all appropriate steps to remove obstruction of justice in the state of Alabama. For this purpose, he was authorized and directed inter alia means among other things, to call into active military service of the United States and use any or all units of the Army National Guard or Air National Guard of the state of Alabama. Both the proclamation and executive order were issued under and expressly invoked the authority of the U.S. Code Title 10. Now, that is justification for what Donald Trump is doing right now. Okay? Robert Kennedy called it obstruction of justice. I'm calling it hindering a federal investigation, but it's the same thing. When a state, city, county, whatever it is, says to the federal government, we're not obeying the federal law, the president has the authority to move in and force them to do it. Okay? Now, the president does not have the authority to run the Chicago Police Department. But if somebody in that department hinders the feds, which obviously happened in Chicago, they can be charged. All right, so I think that's the best analysis you're ever going to get of what is happening now. It'll go to the Supreme Court, and I expect the Supreme Court will rule 5-4, maybe 6-3 in President Trump's favor. The liberal judges don't care about the law or the Constitution, they just vote on. And some conservative judges, too, to be fair, do. But on this case, with that Kennedy memo, okay, and I actually sent that memo that I have, because I don't think anybody else has it, to the White House. I sent it there. Now, whether they look at it, I don't even know. But that's my job as an American citizen and a journalist, and that's the memo.